Welcome back to the Rise of Black Fathers. This is Quan and JJ. We got our boy Justin on the line here discussing the topic of relationships. Let's talk about it.
The main point of this call was kind of for us to dive into you anyway. And, when we wanted to bring you on, you have your own unique perspective with relationships. And, you are in a position that you've been in how long have you been in a relationship again?
About 7.5 years.
7.5 years. 7.5 years. So that's a unique perspective that I really can't say many of my friends that I know have been in a long-term committed relationship. Not only that, since college, So you hold your own perspectives from that. And then, I know a little bit about your upbringing and stuff like that. And, it doesn't look to me like you've really seen that growing up. So I guess kind of what made you want to have a long-term committed relationship, when you really didn't see that growing up too much?
Well, I didn't. I didn't want to. That's the short answer. It just kind of happened, I was doing my thing and living my own life and trying to have as much fun as possible in college. And, that's when I met Maria. And Maria was doing the same thing. We had no intention of being in a relationship. She had no intention of being with me at all. And we just, after a certain while kind of vibe. And eventually, I would say 4 months after we had met and then we're hanging out and just sharing some time together, we decided that we should actually be exclusive and be boyfriend and girlfriend. But the expectation was that we were still going to be who we were. We were still going to participate in our own individual things. We were still going to be able to hang out with our own friends without the significant other. I think sometimes people get lost in their relationships. And that's something that I feel like Maria and I have been able to successfully do is not to get lost in a relationship at any given point. We never disappeared on our friends. We never stopped doing the activities we were already doing when we were single. We just included the other person when appropriate. So yeah, I never really, my goal was not to be in a long-term relationship, it just kind of, it happened for me and I'm glad it did. Because she's a very, very special person,
My question to follow up with that, was that a conversation you have early on? Is that something where you saw you were pulling away from each and other friends and you're like, we got to do something different? Like, how did y'all get to that point where you knew okay, I still got to have my friends, you still got to have your friends, and that's okay if it's separate? Because I feel like a lot of times people, like you said, you already alluded to, people don't do that. They jump in that relationship and it's only relationship and it's us. So how did y'all get to that point where you kind of understood each other on that grounds?
I think mentally we were both kind of in that zone. I had not just, but 8 to 10 months prior, I was in a relationship before her and that one ended. And I had, for me, I had some depression. So I really didn't want to get in a relationship at all. I really just wanted to live my life. And, Maria, she was in a relationship much more recently than I was. So she wasn't trying to get into a relationship. She was just trying to live her life. And so when we decided to, come together, we had to set expectations from the get-go. We had to say, hey, this is where I'm at and this is what I want to do. And then, I don't know, how far this is going to go, but, I'm willing to write it out with you. But, we're not going to change up hanging out with our friends. We're not going to change up being who we are, but we do want to include each other. So, sometimes we'd have kickbacks and, I'd have my, and that time it was college. So I had my fraternity brothers and she'd bring her sorority sisters. So it was fun for everybody, and, she had her friends outside her sorority. I had my friends outside of my fraternity and we'd all hang out. So we was able to include each other, but also just, it is important, the communication, because if you don't have the communication and the expectation, well, then the other person is just left to their own devices to think about what their expectation is. In the beginning of the relationship, she's like, yo, I don't want you to be dancing with other females like that. I said, you know what, that's fine. That's something I can take away. After a while, I was like, all right, come on. And so she was like, all right, we can loosen up on that. You can dance with people I know and people I trust. And I said, okay, that's fair. Same thing. But as long as the expectation is there, and then when you talk about it, you communicate it, you bring it up.
I think you hit on the money right there, communication, man. And it sounds like the reason things went so well and they're probably still going so well is because you all were very open and communicated from the beginning. And as someone, you know, on my end, who I pride myself on communication, but if you come across someone who doesn't have that communication, I don't know if you know this because of the situation you're in, but what is some advice you might give of how to foster that environment of communication? Because it's one thing to communicate, but my style of communication might be different from my partner's style of communication. I'm sure you come into that. So what are some things that you may do that allows that communication to be free flowing on both parties?
Yeah, I mean, there's a learning curve to that, right? Like I had that issue in the beginning. Like Maria's style of communication, very different. Sometimes when we had arguments, she would just shut down and not talk. And for me, I had a really kind of messed up perspective of what love meant and what, you know, caring about a person meant, you know, and I had to get over that because I was like, yo, if we're not arguing and you're not yelling at me and telling me that you hate me, then you don't love me. You know, like it was a very weird kind of messed up preconceived notion of what everything meant. But after a while, you know, she brings it up to my attention, like, hey, I don't like the way you communicate with me on this, and this is why. And so I got to hear that. But if I don't hear it, I also have to face the fact that, you know, maybe she's going to come to a breaking point where she doesn't want to deal with that, and she leaves. So when you have that, you just have to bring it up to each other and kind of work through it. But if you're not able to work through it, then you're not able to work through it, you know, and you can't hang yourself too much on it. You know, there's a couple times where it was like maybe things weren't going to work out between me and Maria, but, you know, we had conversations and we talked about it and we made it through. But it's all about making sure that you are communicating with your partner about like what you like, what you don't like, and being open and honest, like, yo, I don't like the way you said that to me. Because like if one person says something, they just think that they're being direct and being a good communicator, but the other person thinks they're being aggressive. You know, it's important to understand that and then change up, or at least improve. I wouldn't say change up, but it definitely improve and make sure that you're doing what's right by your partner without changing who you are as an individual.
And that's some real shit, Justin. You know, 7.5 years, that's a long time. One thing I want to ask you though, when I'm hearing you explain your guys' situation, all I'm thinking about is like a high level of emotional intelligence. So I want to ask you, you know, what has strengthened your emotional intelligence from not receiving that growing up?
I would say Maria, you know, like she invested a lot of time. She could have left really early in the relationship, but she decided to kind of, you know, help me out and grow as an individual, because I was a very different person when we had first met, and I didn't have any emotional intelligence. I was horrible. You know, I didn't, you know, communicate well, and the communication I did do, it wasn't received well. It was received as being too aggressive or too blunt, and I didn't necessarily care about, you know, how the other party felt, and you know that kind of, you know, messed up my first my other relationship, you know. But with her, she was like, hey, like we're gonna keep on going through this, and working on it, and she helped me out a lot. So I think as long as you're open and you're willing to grow and improve, then you know you got something. But if you're closed-minded and you're not trying to grow and you're not trying to improve, then ultimately things probably aren't going to work out. And it depends on your partner to see how long they want to stick it out. Because again, you know, I would say Maria had to spend a good year to a year and a half just working through it before I started to really improve, you know. But she could have left in 6 months, you know, and I would have never got there, and I wouldn't, you know, have the same ideas that I have today. But because she invested that time and she invested into me, you know, it helped me. And Maria was much more shy back then, and now she's more confident. You know, she's able to, you know, express herself more. So it's a give and take. We both had something that the other needed.
I got to follow up with that, man, because it sounds to you, I probably feel like you're talking to me right now. Last couple of days, I found myself keeping it real. You know, that's what I say when I'm giving my opinion or my advice. This is just what it is. And it's not being received well. And I brush that off like, hey, I'm a realist. And it sounds to me like, from what you're saying, that there's an ownership on the person as well, where you may be honest, you may be communicating the best way you can, but there has to be some ownership that other person doesn't communicate that way. So my question to you is, as to someone who is currently in those shoes that you were in, how did you kind of rewire your thinking and you become more open to the fact that, yeah, I may be being honest and yeah, I may be communicating what's best for me, but how did you get to the point where, like, okay, I have to also know, how can I communicate to the person I'm talking to? Like, how did you get to that switch? Because I'm kind of in that space and I'm just trying to figure out kind of how to work through that.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it was a switch. I think gradually over time, it kind of got better, but, ultimately I didn't want Maria to leave me. So I knew, that I had to improve the way I was communicating, and I was in a good spot with her. So I didn't want things to change and change up. So something had to give. So I had to be able to, communicate the way that I like to communicate, but in a way that she can receive it well. And there's a better ways to do it, instead of saying like, I don't know, like, I don't like what you did yesterday. This is hella stupid what you did, and go on from there. You'd say, hey, look, like, let's talk about what you did yesterday. And then it kind of irritated me. And then you can still get that point across, but you're not being as forward or aggressive with it. And that's something I learned from my mom, man. My mom is very forward and very aggressive, and that's how I kind of came out. And with Maria, she was very opposite in that. And so having something or having someone that you don't want to lose or someone that you want to improve for really helps. If you don't have that, then there's really no motivation. You're really only relying on your intrinsic motivation. For me, my intrinsic motivation wasn't strong enough. I needed that outer motivation for me. So some people, they got it. You can look at yourself and be like, yo, there's no way I'm going to keep on going through life and being like this. So I have to improve for myself. Some people are like, yo, I love this person, or I got to be better for my mom, or I got to be better for my siblings. And it pushes them.
To follow up on that note, bro, 7.5 years, y'all been with each other for 7.5 years. How long have y'all been living with each other?
Oh, that's a good one. At least 5. At least
Okay,
5.
cool.
And then we in college, we used to stay at each other's houses, like apartments, all the time. We didn't want to move in together, but since at least, I want to say 2016, 5 years.
5 years, bro. So that's definitely some time right there. From y'all's current situation, if it ain't too personal, what are you still working on personally to improve your relationship?
I would say, like, for me, I'm not necessarily gonna speak for her, but for me, it's this kind of feeling like, I mean, a lot of people around us and in our lives, they want us to get married, and that's just not a step that I'm ready to take yet. And I keep on holding off and pushing and trying to make sure we can, postpone it as much as possible. But that's like inside things that I'm dealing with. Coming from the kind of environment that I came from, I just don't see it working. I've never seen a marriage really work. So very few, and so I don't, I guess it scares me, but that's my own personal issues that I got to get over, right? I got to handle that. She can help me through it, but at the same time, I got to realize that it's going to be all right, no matter what, kind of same thing here. That thing sometimes, we don't, when you're in a relationship, you may not trust your significant other, but if you don't trust your significant other, it's just, things are going to fall apart. You need to trust them to do what they're going to do and handle their own business. And, I need to trust that, things aren't necessarily going to change once we get married. We're going to continue to, have this relationship and share our lives and, continue to push each other. But yeah, that's what I'm working on, man. Just kind of getting over that fear, getting over that inside, mentality.
That's real right there, man. Because as someone who has no one and wants someone, my fear is not finding someone on that level, and I think I struggle with the fact of this idea of, when is it that first week, that first 2 weeks, what's the timeline? And it sounds to me like, listening to you all, you came into this situation not wanting that, and it just happened, so it kind of makes me kind of wonder if the way I personally look at relationships and what it means to be in a relationship, if that needs to change, because oftentimes I'm always like, well, it feels weird right now, and you're putting the expectation on something and you don't even know what it is yet. You haven't gave it time to breathe and figure out what it is. So, I don't really. It just kind of has me thinking a little bit on my perspective of that.
Well, the other thing is like everyone's different, right? Like the way that people go about things. So it's not like cookie cutter. Because like I don't know. I mean, we haven't chatted a lot, JJ, but like I'm very cynical. So like I'm always like, yeah, shit's not gonna work out. That's just not gonna last. This isn't gonna happen. Whatever. I'm super cynical, but at the same time, I'm all about, ultimately being optimistic. Like the cynicism is for comedy for me. But overall, you got to put your best foot forward, be positive, and go after it. But every situation is different. It's so hard to tell. But I always tell people, and I told my boy a few years ago, bro, like just stop looking for love, bro. Don't look for it. Just live your life. And now he's in a relationship for like 2.5, almost 3 years, and he's lived in with his girl, and he's helping her go to college and things, or go back to school. So he's really happy. And he was like, bro, like I just stopped and I just started living my life, and it worked out. I was like, cool. I just don't think, me personally, that people should go looking for it. Just live your life, and things will happen.
Hey, that's a big gem right there, bro. Just live your life. And I feel like when you say that, I'm over here thinking like, bro, love yourself. Because how you really gonna love somebody else if you can't love yourself first?
Right.
And how you gonna live your life if you can't even enjoy being alone, or just whatever that situation is? You don't got to be alone, but you can live your life and do whatever you need to do. But it's mainly like finding that personal happiness is what hit me from you saying that. Just live your life, and don't be out here searching for love, trying to force it. Really just going with the flow and letting that marinate, bro. You dropping gems today, bro. I was gonna ask you some follow-up questions, but you not only you dropping the gem and you explaining it, bro. I'm fucking with it, Jeff. Yes, sir.
That live your life piece is money, man. I mean, because I used to struggle being alone. I just wanted to be, intimate. I wanted to be in somebody's face. I wanted to do that. That's a whole other can of worms when you come to college and all that. And it got to a point when I was forced, when college is over, the roommates stopped, you're done being around thousands of people. All you got is yourself. And it took a long time to be comfortable in that space. And I can say now I'm at a point where I kind of love my own self. Being around people is a little too much now. But I can see how now when you're comfortable with yourself and you're comfortable in your own skin, all somebody can do is just add to that. I think that people get into that problem when they're looking to be completed by someone else. And the moment it doesn't work, or the moment they leave, now they're like, fuck, what am I going to do? Because you predicate yourself as being whole with this person. So I think you made a good point, Quan, to bring that out, that you got to be comfortable with yourself as is before you can allow someone to come in. Because if it doesn't work or things are going sideways, you still know who you are and you're still comfortable with yourself. You can live with that person. No, that was I agree with you on that one for sure.
That's a hard expectation to put on someone, Like you're like, yo, like I want to be with you, and part of that is I need you to be my source of happiness. Like that's got to be exhausting. Like that'd be exhausting for the other person. So yeah, I 100% agree, man. You gotta be happy with yourself, and you gotta bring your happiness to the table, and your partner has to do it too. Because if you're with a partner that needs you for their own happiness, it's my belief that you're gonna get exhausted. You're gonna get exhausted, and you're gonna tell your friends that you're exhausted, and because you gotta vent to somebody, and then they're gonna be like, "Yo, that relationship's toxic. You gotta go." and yeah, man, you gotta be happy with your own situation, and you gotta be able to find someone that's happy with their own situation. That no matter what happens, you guys will both be solid.
Bro, that's money, bro. That's money. I've been in a couple relationships to where, it turned toxic, especially to the point of like, I literally had somebody tell me that they weren't happy if we weren't hanging out. And then it got to the point where, I'm over here like, man, this shit ain't good. If I care about this person, I gotta end this here and help her, get away from that, because, if I want to go kick it with the homies or whatever, if she ain't there or whatever, I ain't come back to her, it's issues and all that. I'm like, man, this ain't right. So I really, going back to, there was a lack of communication there, evidently. But with you and Maria, how y'all even just communicated that, I can go hang out with my homies, you can hang out with your girls, and then when it's proper for both of y'all to be together, that situation. And then I think another part of it is y'all had a nice unspoken trust. Yeah, I guess it really was spoken, but I think that came from y'all just being very open and with y'all expectations from the beginning. We can have these conversations anytime, any day with each other, which we do, but it's mainly, get on here and on the recorded line, just being ourselves and putting that out for that little boy or that, that person that's in a relationship, or, we can put a whole spectrum of situations that a person can be in that need to hear this. You dropping big ass gems on the relationship tip. I'm telling you, this, you're gonna help somebody out on that alone, and it's just all about, a form of just giving back without looking for nothing in return. It's like, man, we be having these conversations. Other people need to see them.
Yeah, man, I love it, man. I love to see it. You don't see it a lot. And then when Quan told me, I know it was a little last minute, but Quan told me, you can hop on. I was like, man, what? Tell me a little bit more about him. I talked to him, but tell me a little bit more about him. And I'm trying to figure out, like, man, what gem can he bring? And I thought about it, I was like, he been in a relationship longer than I know anybody. Like, outside of my mom, who 30 years, they just celebrated their 30th anniversary last week. I don't know nobody that close that's even there. I think you're the next closest, which is crazy. Like 7 years, like, which is crazy. I'm personally like, hit up the phone, what's up? I'm cool with, like, 7 years. I seen 30, which is a blessing. I'm able to see that every day. But the next closest you telling me is 30? I mean, 7?
Yeah.
Like, so I was like, we got to hear that. And for you to be in our generation, we don't see that. So many people look at, social media and they get their relationship goals from a Sweetie and Quavo, and look how that happened. And that's what you predicating yourself on. And it's like, let's talk to somebody who's living it, who is influenced by all of that, but still able to have a solid rock and solid bond. And to hear what you said, it's like, it take work. At the end of the day, man, it take work. You have to work at each other. And on top of working, I think what's key, what people forget, you got to want to work for the other person. You can only not put in the work, but you got to want to work. Each of you have to want to work for the other person. And at the end of the day, if you're not willing to put in that work, then don't do it. You wasting time. You wasting your time. You wasting their time. Don't do it. Nobody telling you have to put in work. But if you want to be in a relationship, be in a relationship with somebody you're willing to work for that relationship with. Because at the end of the day, it looks from you, from my parents, it's beautiful, man. At the end of the day, you work through those problems and trials and tribulations. On the end, the grass is truly greener, for sure.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, man.
I said one thing you can't be scared of what someone can take away from you. You just gotta, be positive about what each other can give to one another, and just build upon. And you also gotta have people around you that, are you're able to talk things through, because you're gonna hit a wall with your partner on certain things. And when you have those friends those brothers that you can talk to and say, hey, bro, this is what I'm going through with my girl, and I don't know if we're gonna make it. And they come in with another perspective, like, yo, you need to stop being so prideful, so stubborn, and so ignorant, and look at it this way. And I think that also helps. I'm in a point where my girl can talk to my friends, and they have hearts of hearts, and they have, you know, venting sessions. And I love it because, you know, she's able to help them out with questions that they have about the girls that they're seeing, or the women that they're having issues with. And I think that's very important that, you know, you build that community where you're able to have that trust, you know, and that influence and the impact that your friends and your family have on you, you can, it doesn't go away. There's some sort of impact. Like sometimes my mother will say things and I don't always listen to what my mom says. She doesn't always get the best advice, but it's in the back of my mind sometimes. And I'm like, man, my mom really hit me with something. I don't know if I should trust my girl now, or I don't know if I should trust my friend now, because she's like, oh, no one's really your friend, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, well, let me really think about that. But then I'm like, nah, like, let me straighten out and dive in my own perspective, right? So other times that they have positive things to say and positive, you know, impacts, like, you know, you're going to be with this person for the rest of your life and you need to treat it right. And then you're like, all right, well, let me take the positive things and really exemplify that. But yeah, having people you can talk to is immeasurable.
I think what I would add to that is, I agree. You know, your circle, your immediate circle, you know, is definitely important, and you got to be very cautious with who you allow in that circle. But at the same time, I think it's also important to understand that a person gives you advice from their perspective, from their lens. So it's important that while we do listen to what other people say in their advice, we also recognize that, like you had mentioned earlier, everybody's different. Every situation is different. It's not cookie cutter. So
Correct.
You got to be cautious with, you know, you got to know what to take from certain people and whatnot. And what you were alluding to, what to take from certain people and what not to take from certain people when they are giving that advice, for sure. Shit, man, I think that was good, man. I ain't trying to push it no more. I think we closed it, but man, I ain't gonna lie, bro. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. Quan told me he was gonna add you, and I was like, man, what are we gonna talk about? You know, like what Justin gonna bring? You know, you're a funny guy. You know, he's the cool guy. And then you know, I kind of knew a little bit about your relationship and how long it was, and I didn't know where it was gonna go. And I can honestly say, man, I'm really happy that, you know, Quan thought of you and brought you to this space, because while I knew you've been in a long relationship, you know, to hear the work you put in, to hear the self-reflection you did, to hear that you're with someone that saw that in you and didn't give up on you, you know, it gives me hope, man. It really sit here and makes me excited for my person that's out there. I just haven't found it yet. You know, my person, there's somebody out there, because you're a living testament, man, that it exists. It's real. You know, my parents isn't a unicorn. Their relationship, their friends aren't unicorns. You know, what they experience is real. And now I'm seeing it. At first, it's easy to be like, oh, that's your generation. That was different. But to see that we grew up in the same generation, the same influence, technology, everything's at a fingertip, and to see the work that you all put in and to see how beneficial it was to your life, her life, and those around you, it gets me excited, man. So I just appreciate you, you know, being honest and coming on this platform and expressing, you know, telling your truth, because it's a living testament that, you know, true love is out there. You just got to put in the work and don't look for it. I think that's one thing we can take away from this call. Stop looking for it. Have fun. And before you know, it might fall in your lap. So, you know, I appreciate that for sure.
Yeah, we're gonna have to hear you more, JJ. I got a lot more to add.
I was just about to tell you that, bro. You know, hey, I already know, talking to you, we got so many different conversations that we gonna bring in just different levels, just from your past childhood and, you know, different things that you've seen. So yeah, best believe we're gonna have you back on here. Y'all just seen Justin here dropping gems for the relationship now. Hey, we're gonna bring him back, as you know. That concludes the Rise of Black Fathers.
Rise.